Humanoid robots will be able to do every task relating to setting, clearing, cleaning tables in the hospitality industry. This approach, merging large event models with humanoid robots, can and will be applied to many trillion-dollar markets. For example, we're already training robots to build houses from the ground up, and they're going to expand into every type of construction. We will need several humanoid robots to work together to carry large, heavy objects, like lumber and steel. But once one robot can learn to carry objects, or hammer them together or bind them, and do all of the many types of tasks to build homes, bridges, and roads, this market will accelerate quickly. We can also use large event models to train robots to create and oversee indoor vertical farms, to grow and harvest an abundance of fruits and vegetables in locations that are not conducive to traditional outdoor horizontal agriculture. In medicine, humanoid robots will perform every kind of task if the testing equipment is available. They will also carry out every type of treatment, basically emulating what nurses do. We'll have large event models that are powerful enough to create humanoid robots to emulate everything that doctors now do. In terms of product distribution, humanoid robots will perform all tasks from end to end. So companies such as Amazon already have specialized equipment to help accomplish this, but once there's an enormous market for humanoid robots and their future versions, they will become very inexpensive and accessible to all businesses, large and small. They'll perform retail work, including sophisticated jobs that require customer interaction. After all, AI's language skills are already more advanced than its physical skills today. So basically, everything we now do with our bodies and minds will be feasible for humanoid robots, and they will be able to do more, like save people from dangerous situations that are too risky for human emergency workers, and there's many different situations like that that are feasible. These physical tasks comprise approximately half our economy if you go through them all. Humanoid robots are starting out with routine tasks, but over time they'll do everything that humans can do with our hands and bodies. Look at the enormous progress we've made with LLMs, large language models, in just the last 2 years. We're going to see the same rapid progress in the physical world, now that we have basic human-centric robots. By merging large event models with humanoid robots, we will transform every industry, including medicine, manufacturing, hospitality, and consumer markets, basically half our economy.
Hey guys, welcome back in. That was our guy Ray Kurzweil, who was given a TED Talk recently, and he recently had a book published called The Singularity is Nearer. So he's been touring and speaking, promoting that book, and this TED Talk was part of that promotion. I've got the book and I've started reading it, but it's every bit as confusing or confounding as that clip you just heard. This portion of the talk was geared around humanoid robots doing the work of humans and how already robots are building homes. While they're not humanoid robots building homes, large 3D printers are already building homes. And there was a 60 Minutes segment on that very subject this past week. And he goes on to say that humanoid robots will eventually carry out all jobs. That's been his contention for decades. And let me reiterate that Ray Kurzweil is very well thought of in this tech world. He's very well thought of as a futurist. His predictions have been eerily on the mark over the past few decades. And his predictions are largely based on computational output year over year. And if intelligence computation keeps compounding at the rate it is, while simultaneously becoming cheaper, the next 20 years is going to be wild. And it gets even more wild. While the speech itself, he's not a tremendous speaker. He's very soft-spoken. But if you pay attention to what he says, what's coming is pretty wild. So here he is again.
When we get to the 2030s, nanobots will connect our brains to the cloud, just the way your phone does. It'll expand intelligence 1 million-fold by 2045. That is the singularity. We will be funnier, sexier, smarter, more creative, free from biological limitations, We'll be able to choose our appearance. We'll be able to do things we can't do today, like visualize objects in 11 dimensions. We can speak all languages. We'll be able to expand consciousness in ways we can barely imagine. We'll experience richer culture with our extra years. So I've recently become a grandfather. I'm very much looking forward to that, spending more time with family, friends, loving and being loved, all enhanced by AI. I believe this gives life its greatest meaning.
So by the 2030s, nanobots will connect our brains to the cloud. I really don't know what that means. I think I know what it means. It's so abstract to think something like that would even be possible. And then he said, we're going to expand intelligence 1,000,000-fold by 2045. 1,000,000-fold. If he's doing these, if computational ability is increasing that much year over year, perhaps that's right. I'm not a mathematician. But 2045 is the year when he predicts we'll reach the singularity, which, to be very reductionistic, is essentially the merging of machines and humans. And then he goes on to say, in that clip, that we'll be free from biological limitations. I don't know if that's in regards to health. I don't know if that's in regards to defying gravity. I don't know. I don't know what that means exactly. He did say we could choose how we look, how funny we'll be, and we can visualize objects in 11 dimensions, and we'll experience richer culture with our extra years. So Ray Kurzweil really believes that we're going to eliminate death, especially by 2045 when we reach the singularity. And he said that if you can hang on for just a few more years, meaning not die, that you'll essentially be able to live forever if you choose to do so. Now, Ray Kurzweil is in his late 70s, so I'm guessing he's hoping he's right. But again, it's really hard to wrap your head around what he's saying. But you can Google Kurzweil's curve, and it will show you the explosion of computation and intelligence over the last 100 years and the next projected 20 or 30 years. And that growth is going to continue to be exponential. And based on his reasoning, we'll be able to do all those things he listed by 2045. Though he doesn't stop to talk about, the unintended consequences or to ask if this is good for humanity. And I'm a Ray Kurzweil fan, but he's definitely hyper-focused on technology's upside with little regards for the downside. Though he will go so far as to say that technology will solve the issues created by technology. You take that for what it's worth. In any case, if you've ever hoped to view objects in 11 dimensions, you may get your chance if you can make it to 2045. So let's get into some headlines from NPR, quote, memorializing loved ones through AI. So we've talked about this here before. Ray Kurzweil is planning to do this with his family members. He's cataloging his father's data so he can converse with his father in the coming years and decades or centuries, however long he lives. This is going to be a billion-dollar industry, multi-billion-dollar industry. And this article focuses on a man dying of colon cancer who created an AI avatar of himself for his wife to interact with after he dies. There's an interview with the guy and his wife, and he talks about the process and how it works. Mechanically, I don't have many questions. It seems pretty straightforward that if you have pictures or video online, it can be manipulated to be a believable avatar, along with your voice, which has been replicated by the AI. In this case, the man said he told 150 stories about all phases of his life. So when his wife converses with the AI after he's dead and gone, it would pull from those stories to carry on conversations. But the obvious question is that 150 stories may be enough to make the AI believable, but certainly the AI will be missing some valuable context about this guy's life. Though maybe that will be supplemented by the wife later on, it's hard to say. This guy doesn't see this as being immortal. He sees it as leaving a digital memoir for his wife. And that's another way to look at it, certainly. But there's got to be a line here, right? I mean, it's one thing to leave a letter to your family if you're facing death or even a video, but an AI avatar is something else entirely, something you can converse with. I mean, this will effectively be an AI she can carry on a relationship with, at least until she dies. And then after she dies, she could do the same thing and the two AIs could go on carrying a relationship together, maybe. I don't know. I would think this is an area rife with potential for unintended consequences. I mean, what happens when we no longer have a grieving process, or what happens when the grieving process is interrupted by a realistic avatar talking to you in your husband's voice, sharing memories that you shared with your real husband 20 years ago? That seems like it could be or get problematic at some point. Knowing what I know about this now, if I had the option and I was facing certain death, it's extremely difficult for me to say I wouldn't follow the same path, as I would certainly want my wife and child to have as much of me to hold on to as possible. But I'm thinking through this now, and this will become a natural companion for the wife in the article. She can effectively talk to her husband after his physical death, much like she talks to him now without his physical presence. So will she plan a date night with her digital husband in the years following his death? This lady might not, but certainly people will at some point. And is it healthy? I don't know. Are we thinking through this? I mean, the wife in this story seems fairly resolute that she'll be able to keep the AI separate from her actual husband. But what happens when she can order a humanoid robot in the exact likeness of her husband? Because that is coming. I mean, if you listen to what Ray Kurzweil says, should we all be cataloging, our loved ones' lives so that we too can take advantage of this after they're gone? Maybe this becomes a rite of passage, like filling out a will. I don't know. Who's to say? Next up from the BBC, quote, AI took their jobs, now they get paid to make it sound human. From the article, if you're worried about how AI will affect your job, the world of copywriters may offer a glimpse of the future. Writer Benjamin Miller, not his real name, was thriving in early 2023. He led a team of more than 60 writers and editors publishing blog posts and articles to promote a tech company that packages and resells data on everything from real estate to used cars. It was really engaging work, he says, a chance to flex his creativity and collaborate with experts on a variety of subjects. But one day, his manager told him about a new project. They wanted to use AI to cut down on cost, and he had to sign a non-disclosure agreement and asked that the BBC withhold his name and the company's name. And a month later, the business introduced an automated system. His manager would plug a headline for an article into an online form. An AI model would generate an outline based on that title, and Miller would get an alert on his computer. Instead of coming up with their own ideas, his writers would create articles around those outlines, and Miller would do a final edit before the stories were published. He only had a few months to adapt before he got news of a second layer of automation. Going forward, ChatGPT would write the articles in their entirety, and most of his team was fired. The few people remaining were left with an even less creative task, editing ChatGPT's subpar text to make it sound more human. And by 2024, the company laid off the rest of his team, and he was alone. Quote, all of a sudden, I was doing just everyone's job. And every day, he'd open the AI written documents to fix the robot's formulaic mistakes, churning out the work that used to employ dozens of people, end quote. So now it's generally known, and we've discussed it here before, that copywriters consistently rank towards the top of jobs expected to be automated away first. So to me, at least, this seems like a natural progression, though I don't want to sound flippant in any way about these folks losing their jobs, because I would expect these folks to be stressed out and trying to figure out their next move. Do they take another job writing somewhere, or do they see the writing on the wall and change careers altogether for something with a bit more staying power? And we've also talked here about the rule of efficiencies. I mean, this was a team of over 60 people that is now a team of one, with 99% of the work being performed by AI. And if you go on to read the rest of the article, the last man alive from this group talks about how one of his jobs, or about how this job has become less creative and more robotic. So in his case, he's essentially trying to make the AI sound more human. Will this be an ongoing need, or will AI get to the point where even that fine-tuning isn't needed? And I'm guessing that the latter is true there. But just thinking about this further, those folks in AI stating that AI will supplement us in our work and help us be more creative, I'd like to see how they respond to stories like this. Okay, next up from the Wall Street Journal, quote, "The influencer is a young teen girl, and the audience is 92% adult men," end quote. Now, this may be the most infuriating article I've read in years. I mean, based on that headline alone. But in this case, a mom started an Instagram page for her daughter for seemingly, innocuous reasons. It was during the pandemic, and the page gave both mom and daughter a way to do a project together, remain close. And, further than that, the mom managed the account. So it wasn't as if the daughter was. But from that article, quote, "We didn't even have the page for a month, and brands were like, can we send her dance wear?" The mom said. She became popular really fast. She was talking about the daughter. The mom also began to notice a disturbing trend in the data that showed up on the account dashboard. Most of the girl's followers were adult men. Men left public comments on photos of the daughter with fire and heart emojis, telling her how gorgeous she was. Those were the tamer ones. Some men sent direct messages proclaiming their obsessions with the girl. Others sent pictures of male genitalia and links to porn sites. Sometimes the mom spent 2 to 4 hours a day blocking users or deleting inappropriate comments. At the same time, more sponsorships and deals were trickling in. It just kept growing, she said, and then the brands weren't just dance brands anymore. The daughter, who's now in high school, said it was actually really cool. The daughter loved coming up with creative posts. She told her mom she wanted to become an influencer, a dream job she could pursue after school and dance practice. It wasn't like I was trying to push her to be a star, but part of me thought it was inevitable, that it could happen someday, the mom said. She just had that personality. The mom was torn. To reach the influencer stratosphere, the account would need a lot more followers, and she would have to be less discriminating about who they were. Instagram promotes content based on engagement, and the male accounts she had been blocking tend to engage aggressively, lingering on photos and videos and boosting them with likes or comments. Running them off or broadly disabling comments would likely doom her daughter's influencer's aspirations. End quote. So, a thought or two on that. This account was being inundated with lewd comments from grown men, and the mom was torn about whether to continue or not. Now, I recently came across a video, and it's floating around online. I'm sure there are more. A video where an unhinged, fully adult male tracked down a 12-year-old female's home and showed up at the house, and it became an ordeal for the girl and her parents. Now, in both of these examples, the girls were working towards being influencers. What about the normie accounts with teenagers not trying to be influencers? How much are they being creeped on? That's something to think about. So let's just assume that those are dumpster fires as well. So maybe a good rule of thumb is to, 1, don't try to hawk your child, for money online, and 2, be extremely vigilant if you let your child have social media in any way. And this article goes on to explain the mother's weighing of the risk versus the reward. In order for the daughter to have a chance at influencer stardom, she would need all the followers she could get. And that would mean allowing adult males to follow follow her without blocking them. And I guess we all know where she landed on this. She obviously decided to expose her daughter to the risk of having adult male followers. At one count, the girl's audience was 92% male. And if the decision to continue wasn't bad enough, the mom thought it would be a good idea to offer Instagram subscriptions to users willing to pay a monthly fee for extra photos and videos. I mean, what an idiot. From that article, quote, if you want to be an influencer and work with brands and get paid, you have to work with the algorithm. And it all works with how many people like and engage with your post, said this mom. You have to accept it. No, you don't. Call me old-fashioned, but if my child becoming an influencer comes at the risk or cost of my child being exploited by creeps, I can simply opt out. This is not a question. If you think that's extreme, think back to the stories about people using AI to create deepfake nudes of kids. You don't think that's happening? Keep your child away from, social media for as long as humanly possible. This story, as you could tell, it makes my blood boil. And it's a shame you can't be arrested for stupidity. But read this article and send it to your friends, or especially your friends with kids. I think everybody needs to be aware of this. So that last article leads us to this one from the New York Times, quote, the Surgeon General is calling for a warning label on social media platforms, end quote. So this was an op-ed written by our Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy. I hope I got that right. Given what we just went over, the becoming of an influencer at all cost story, this seems like a win. However tried it may seem at the moment, you do have to start somewhere. The data is inconclusive. The more you look into the connection between social media and mental health amongst kids, teenagers, young people, the more you'll hear that the data is inconclusive. And it may very well be inconclusive. And if it is, what a win that is for tech companies to be able to point to the fact that the data is inconclusive. But it reeks of big tobacco companies in the middle of the 20th century touting how good their products were for people's health. But regardless of how inconclusive the data might be, I think we all recognize the correlation between social media and mental health. It's not coincidental that mental health amongst young people began to decline with the rise of social media. So from that article, quote, adolescents who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media face double the risk of anxiety and depression symptoms, and the average daily use in this age group as of the summer of 2023 was 4.8 hours. Additionally, nearly half of adolescents say social media makes them feel worse about their bodies, end quote. I also like that this article states that a warning label will only do so much. Aggressive parenting or deliberate parenting in the way of social media is probably the best path forward for teens and social media. The article also highlights, how hypocritical tech companies are while they preach safety and at the same time limit oversight into their processes and data. And again, our society always focuses on the impacts of teens with social media, and we certainly should be. But what's not talked about ever is the effect of social media on adults. I can't imagine the situation is much better there, if at all. Just for added context, for a warning label to accompany social media, I'm not sure what that would even look like, but it would require congressional action for that to happen. This article is linked so you can read it and the supporting linked articles within that article if you want to see the surveys that were mentioned. And one last note on this, there's a growing movement of young adults who were the first kids to grow up with their parents posting their every move online. And those now adults are hoping to have legislation passed in hopes of limiting parents from oversharing their kids on social media. and we'll discuss that more in future episodes about how it sort of takes their autonomy away from them. So more to come there.
My main goal is to up-level the quality of Copilot. And so we're rapidly building, some of the best models in the world, partnering very closely with OpenAI, building on top of all of OpenAI models and infrastructure, fine-tuning their models. And the next phase is that we're really going to start focusing on memory and personalization. I mean, your AI should remember everything about you, all your context, all your personal data, everything that you've said, and be there to support you and be your aid and your sidekick, throughout your life. So that's what we're going to be focused on next. People have often said that like an AI subsumes all other interfaces and surfaces. And I think that probably overstates it, but it's the right direction. I think there'll come a time in a few years when the first thing you think is you just say, hey, Copilot, can you take care of this for me? Or what's the answer to that? Or where do I find it? Can you book this? Remember that, buy this, do that. You're just going to have this ever-present aid in your life. It's going to change what it means to use a keyboard. It's going to change what it feels like to have apps. It'll move us way beyond the search engine and, the browser. And you're certainly not going to think I need to go write a document or send a message in a traditional way. You'll still have those things, but your AI will just manage a canvas of activity across your entire life, and largely be coordinating with other AIs and other services and collecting information for you.
That was Mustafa Suleyman, who we talked about extensively here. That was a video of an interview he did. Obviously, you only heard the audio there, but he always dresses like, a Bond villain with a turtleneck, and it's kind of a weird look. But in any case, I thought that was interesting. And the more I hear about that, about how our worlds are going to change as AIs get progressively better and AI assistants like Copilot are going to get progressively better, is just how many people opt out. And what that's going to look like for them. Certainly there will be an enormous amount of convenience associated with those AI assistants and copilots. Now, you won't be able to opt out at work necessarily. Efficiency is going to be the name of the game, and you're going to have to embrace these technologies at work if you expect to work for as long as possible. But in your personal life, once work is gone, and Ray Kurzweil contends that that's going to be, in the next 20 years, that work will be eradicated. And people are walking around with these AI assistants. Just how many people are going to say, no, I'm good. I don't want that. I think about the people in my age bracket, millennials, older millennials, who, were young and impressionable at the time the smartphone was revealed in 2008. And we're pretty comfortable with technology, but especially the older generations, I can see them opting out. But if you get younger, I feel like Gen Z and whatever's behind Gen Z are just going to be so ingrained in technology that the opt-out feature will be foreign to them. I guess unless they grow up in just, fundamental households where technology is not around, then maybe, I guess there'll be a few, but for the most part, I feel like Gen Z and below are going to be all in on this sort of technology. But I wonder how many people, older folks, are just going to say, I don't need this. This is not for me. And so you're talking, in the next 20 years, these things are going to be around. 2005, 2004 was 20 years ago. That wasn't that long ago. So that'll be here before you know it. Of course, I'll be, my age bracket would be hitting senior citizenship at that point. So it's difficult to say, but it'll be interesting to see how people say no to AI and tech and how that works. If it's going to be so ingrained in our society. It almost seems like having a smartphone. If you don't have a smartphone today or a computer and you choose not to use it, how difficult is it? I mean, you could still certainly write checks for now if you needed to, but life is certainly more difficult. You just get used to that convenience. But I guess if you've never had it, it's not that big of a deal. So we'll see. And then he goes on to talk about what you're about to hear, Copilot, and how it's really unreliable at this point. It's going to get better, but as for right now, we're still a couple of orders of magnitude away from it being fully capable of where it needs to be. So here he is again.
It's still pretty hard to get these models to follow instructions with subtlety and nuance over extended periods of time. I think that they can do it, and there's a lot of cherry-picked examples that are impressive, on Twitter and stuff like that. But to really get it to consistently do it in novel environments is pretty hard. And I think that it's going to be not one, but 2 orders of magnitude more computation of training the models. So not GPT-5, but more like GPT-6 scale models. So I think we're talking about 2 years before we have systems that can really take action.
I really played that for the benefit of people, in intelligence work. If you work in intelligence work, chances are your company uses Microsoft in some way, and they utilize Copilot. That's obviously a big feature for them. It's going to be the future for them. And, to hear him tell it, he leads AI at Microsoft. So he obviously has a front row seat to it. And he's saying that it's going to be 2 years before this technology is capable of, fully performing. So I think that's a win for folks in intelligence work. So, all right. So I've been getting asked, about what I'm listening to, what I'm reading as it relates to AI. The Ray Kurzweil book is, on my bedside table at the moment, trying to work through that, but it's a tough read, to say the least. If you hear him talk, it's worse trying to read it. But I am reading that. I recently listened to a podcast from Slate, I think it was. Yeah, called Tech Feed. In which there was an interview with a tech writer about your phone tracking your driving. And is your phone giving your information to car manufacturers, who in turn give it to insurance companies, and sort of a 3-way street or a 4-way street? These companies are, I guess my point is, passing the information back to others. So if you've seen your insurance rates go up recently for seemingly no reason, it could very well be that you're looking at your phone while you're driving, and that information has been shared. So this particular podcast goes through the companies that are involved that we know about. This is an added revenue stream for car manufacturers. They found out they could sell your data to insurance companies. And so I would recommend listening to this. And if you are on your phone while you're driving, it may have financial impact on you, outside of it being unsafe, obviously. It may have an impact on your insurance rates. So, all right. So that is it for this episode. Please remember to rate, review, like this episode on whatever platform you're using to listen, and, send to a friend. Be deliberate. Send it to your friends and let them know about the show. That would be a tremendous help. Thanks for listening. We'll talk next time.